welcome to the Weird Warriors podcast. I'm Max.
I'm Rich.
And in this podcast, we will be covering the Weird War Tales comic book series published by DC Comics from 1971 to 1983. In this episode, we will be talking about Weird War Tales number 3 with a cover date of February 1972, on sale November 18th, 1971. As far as the cover detail, there's a banner on top that reads, "The third gut-grabbing issue of Weird War Tales," with Weird all in red, and it's 52 big pages for only 25 cents. Don't take less. Yeah, don't take less. And what jumped out at me right there is just the number 52 with recent DC history, but, you know, that's because I've been reading comics for too long. The image on the cover, I'll let you describe.
Well, the image on the cover is two downed airmen in a small life raft with, it looks like they've been out in it for a little while, a little like sail and a mast and everything. And there looks like to be some sort of seaweed humanoid creature coming out of the ocean, coming towards them. And one of the airmen in the raft sees it, and he's not too terribly sure about it.
Yeah, now that raft to me looked a little small, but what do you think?
It'll be a survival raft. I mean, if these guys are airmen, you know, most of these things will probably be built for one person anyway. So this isn't like a ship life raft that will hold 25 people or anything. Just be for like one, maybe two people. So that's probably about the right size, really.
Yeah, I guess as we'll find out, it does come from the inside of a plane, so space is at a premium. It's just from the cover, I guess, other than, you know, it being labeled, it is labeled like U.S. Air Force, so you could pick up on that. I wonder where they got the stick to make their makeshift sail, but, you know, it balances.
Driftwood. Maybe it was an oar or something. Probably not.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to notice things like that. You know?
Yeah, it balances the image out. So it's Joe Kubert doing his thing.
The things that he does so well.
So, all right. After the cover, we'll get on to our mission debriefings, beginning with, I'll take the first 3-page framing sequence that is, as usual, written and drawn by Joe Kubert. And I have named it Listen, because it doesn't have a name, but these things are generally named after the last thing that the host, creature, or narrator says at the very end. So the synopsis of this first framing sequence is as follows. An American plane crashes into the ocean, and the one conscious airman gets himself and his friend into a life raft. After drifting at sea for a while, a floating humanoid seaweed monster rises out of the water, advising the airmen to, and we have the, as I mentioned, the last panel, the seaweed monster says, "Take heart, young warrior, all is not lost. You are not alone. The deeds of brave men lost in war's holocaust float on the silent waters about you. You do not see them? Perhaps you do not even see me. Then let me tell you of the others. Listen."
Yeah, like this is, you know, Kubert doing Kubert stuff. I mean, this is, you know, we every episode we have the Joe Kubert fanboy party, and this is no different. This is Joe Kubert doing Joe Kubert stuff. I mean, the art is phenomenal. One of my favorite panels is the panel where the plane ditches into the ocean, and there's the wingtip breaking off and the water spray and everything else. It's just a hell of a look. It's a great visual image, you know, depicting the moment a plane smashes into the ocean at, you know, 140 knots or whatever the speed is.
Yeah, the way it's drawn, you can feel the weight of that aircraft hitting the water. You almost don't even need the really cool sound effect of whoomph. But, you know, if that was a silent panel, you could feel it anyway. I mean, Joe Kubert's just, the whole page is pretty much silent except for sound effects. And again, it wouldn't really need them. But, you know, this thing works without anything else other than the drawings. And there really isn't another word until the final panel on page 3. A lot of this story is completely silent. The whole first page has no dialogue. Second, there's no real dialogue until that final panel, and it doesn't need it. I mean, my favorite panel is, of course, the seaweed monster rather dramatically rising out of the water in front of the conscious surviving airman. And the way his hand is held and all that, I can almost hear like the beginning to Michael Jackson's Thriller or something. But it's just a great drawing. It's sopping wet seaweed monster that I think predates Swamp Thing, you know, but looks a heck of a lot like what Swamp Thing would eventually look like. Rises up out of the water and just starts narrating at this guy.
You would know more about Swamp Thing than I would. That's more your wheelhouse. But like I said, this issue is from 71. I would dare guess Swamp Thing was probably out by then. but I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a close one. I'd have to do some actual research, and I'm not doing that before the show. Come on. So after that, we go to the first full story in the issue, and you can take it away.
Hey, been here before, or as the actual issue that this came from, I've been here before. I never get why they feel the need to drop one word out of the title when they do the reprint like this. But it's from GI Combat 44, January 1957. This is the first DC issue of GI Combat. All others previous to this were printed by Quality Comics from 1952 to 1956. This is written by Bill. I finally got credit for Batman Finger, and illustrated by Ross Andru and Bill Esposito. And the synopsis is a young boy is playing war alone outside his family farm and keeps imagining new scenarios, like Calvin, as his parents try to call him inside for dinner. Years later, as a soldier in an actual war, he ends up in one of the same scenarios he imagined before as a kid on the farm, and he thinks, hey, I've been here before. This is pretty relatable. I mean, because really, who at some point in their life doesn't grow up playing soldier? At some point, you're running around, just like in one of the first panel that you see, he's running around with a stick that kind of looks like a rifle, and he's diving behind trees, and he's going rat-tat-tat-tat-tat, and shooting at the imaginary bad guys in his farmhouse and everything. I mean, what guy hasn't done that? Really? So it's very relatable. It's a fun story. He pretends to take out a Nazi machine gun nest in a barn. He pretends to engage a tank hidden in a haystack. Oh, where have we seen that before?
Yeah, it's becoming a theme.
There's a bird flying overhead. It turns into an enemy plane diving on him. So he shoots at it and shoots it down. Yeah,
it's like any chance he gets to distract himself from being called in by either of his parents. Like they'll call him in, and then he'll notice something. Little Tommy will notice something that he uses as an excuse to add one more piece to the war he's imagining in his head, so he doesn't have to go inside.
And like I said, we've all done it. I mean, the book is, who everyone plays Army. Who plays Sailor? No one.
I played pirate.
Same difference.
Yeah, exactly. So you did have a little killjoy was here for this one, though.
Yeah. Well, the funny things is at the very, very end of the story, it's and actually you notice this. One panel says, but 9 years later, another voice summons him and his dad transformed into his sergeant. And the very next panel after that, it's for 10 years later, Tommy is a real soldier in a real war. I'm like, well, which is it? Is it 9 years or is it 10 years? That's just sloppy writing right there. If you
Tommy's very slow to respond to commands.
If the writer can't keep track from one panel to another, that's just messy. But my killjoy moment was, okay, for the sake of argument, 10 years later. So let's just say it's 1945. Tommy was pretending to kill Nazis in 1935. Well, okay, that's very, clairvoyant of you. But, credit where credit is due to the creative team when you're flipping through the story. The tank that Tommy engages as a kid and the enemy plane that he shoots down, it's a Panzer I and a Stuka. And both of those German pieces of military hardware did exist in 1935. So, hey, power to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. They're not expecting Bill Finger's not expecting anyone to do the math when they read this story. I'll give him that. It's just we need time for Tommy to get old enough to go fight in a war. So I'll say 9-10 years or whatever and move on. It was something that made you shake your head as an adult and blink a bit, but I don't think any kid reading this would have noticed at all.
And of course, it ends with "Make war no more," as all these stories do.
Oh yeah.
When they get reprinted, because the original says the end, and the reprint says "Make war no more," and the coloring is a little off. They change up the coloring. And actually, the coloring in the reprint is actually a lot better than the coloring in the original. The original, there's oranges and blues and stuff like that, and in the reprint, it's actual hey, the leaves on the tree are green and the wood is brown and the sky is blue. So okay, now power to the guys that recolored this story for the reprint because they did a better job than the original guys did.
Yeah, there's a period in comics, I think, where that is one of the major advances you're going to see is coloring technology and what can come through in the final printing process. And they can rely on making the journey all the way to print. They become more confident. So I think in a lot of these reprints, one of the things you'll probably see is a lot better coloring job because they just have better technology and a better chance to express themselves. So, again, it's a Bill Finger story, and we all love Bill. We all want good things posthumously, retroactively for Bill. But once again, I thought the story was kind of it was perfunctory. It was a little better than the last one he wrote because at least you had the fun of the kid playing make-believe kind of juxtaposed with the real action of the war. Other than that, most of what I got out of this was the art. I thought, the art team, Ross Andru, and just did a fantastic job. I like the opening panel with Tommy and the image of himself as an adult in the background, like a ghostly figure. I just liked really every panel, except I will point out on, the second page, second to last panel, there's another one of those shots that we've called up before of someone holding a gun really close to their face when they're firing. If you see that,
Yeah. Well, that could just be a perspective shot because he's laying on the ground in a shell crater or something like that. That could just be an attempted perspective, but yeah, that's just a guess. I don't know. It is kind of a weird panel when you look at it.
But I really, as far as commendations, I really liked how this just evoked, as you mentioned in the beginning, this evoked Calvin and Hobbes doing his spaceman spiff or one of his many, Calvin doing one of his many imaginary, play sessions in that strip. So, and this kid even had red hair. He looked like kind of a young Calvin to me. He had light colored hair, and so that was cool to me. That Bill Finger wrote something that reminded me of Calvin and Hobbes.
Well, the original, usually the headers change between the reprint and the original story. That's probably why they changed it from "I've been here before" to "been here before," is because I've got taken up by the floating seaweed monster's head in the reprint. So, but in the original, like I said, when I said this whole thing was relatable, the original starts, "What boy hasn't imagined himself a soldier, brave, untiring, resourceful, a hero on the battlefield? Tommy was like any other boy in this, but what he didn't realize was that his dream would become real. I've been here before."
See, that's a cool intro. I like that. I mean, we obviously need the seaweed monster's floating head to give us a new intro here, but I'm glad you have all these originals because it is cool to hear the text that was there to begin with. And I actually like that a lot better. It fits the story, of course, a lot better. For our next story, we have The Cloud That Went to War. It's reprinted from the second story in Our Fighting Forces 17, also published January 1957. It's a Dave Wood, Ross Andru, and Bill Esposito joint. And in this story, a cloud rises from the sea, then travels through the war, giving cover to a besieged American fighter plane, helping out some potentially exposed paratroopers, and then becoming a rain cloud to relieve some parched soldiers stuck in a lifeboat. There's another lifeboat, before returning to sea, only to rise again as an innocent cloud once more. So literally, it's a cloud that goes to war, and you have the environment intervening to affect the lives of mostly American troops. And it's a cool little story. The art's fantastic, but there are some points where Killjoy is going to be here and shake a finger. So go ahead.
Oh, of course. Well, the first page, there's a P-38 with one engine on fire, and he's got two Focke-Wulfs on his tail. Only they're not Focke-Wulfs; they're ME-109. So they were that classic, gaffe that happens all the time in these books.
For shame.
Doom. And I don't know if I've said this before, but the one thing that irritates me a little bit about the old war books is they slather swastikas on everything that's German just so you know it's the bad guy. And the only thing that's worse than slathering swastikas on the bad guy is slathering backwards swastikas on the bad guy. Because it's going the wrong direction, it's like almost like it's a mirror image or something. The angles are like 180 degrees off, and you see that a lot.
Wrong plane, wrong swastikas, Killjoy all over the place.
What the heck, man?
Of course, I didn't notice that at all. I mean, like if you you tell me the swastika is going the wrong way, I can be like, oh yeah, it looks a little more like the symbol for the band DRI than it looks like a swastika, I guess. But that would only make sense to someone that grew up into hardcore punk like me. But
Not me.
I couldn't have told you that to begin with. That didn't jump out at me at all. But I have not studied this iconography as deeply as yourself. Other than that, though, those points. I mean, is there anything else for Killjoy?
No, that's the only thing. I mean, everything else, nothing else like jumped out at me. From the Killjoy perspective. Keeping in mind, it's a war book. Obviously, there's all kinds of highly unlikely stuff jumping out at you anyway. But those are the ones that just bothered me the most, I guess, is as good a way of saying it.
Now, anything stand out to you as far as changes from the original to this reprint?
The original, again, the box, in the reprint, it's the floating seaweed head, talking about the churning waters of the sea gave life, blah, 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 blah. But this one goes, it drifted high above the world below. In time, the billowing white mass in the sky would prove a haven to some, to others, a place of danger, for it was the cloud that went to war.
Yeah, again, I like that better. But, of course, you got to
reel in the seaweed head.
Yeah, you have to keep the conceit going here. But it is cool to hear the original intro. It's just, it serves the actual purpose of the story better. I got to say, I've always been a mild booster of Ross Andru, but as I discover his art and these weird war tales, I'm becoming an even bigger fan because I saw mostly his superhero work in the 70s and 80s.
Andru and Esposito worked together a lot.
That's good news because this story looks really cool.
I mean, this like usually it's almost like where one went, the other went. Because you see Andru Esposito all the time in the old DC war books. They worked together a lot.
I've got to check out the Spider-Man comics and stuff that I read with Ross's art and see if Esposito was still hanging with him then, because there's a superstar team, in my opinion, that I have not been consciously aware of until right now. So this is becoming a pair I'm going to look for, because the inking, I mean, you have the three opening panels have a cloud, coming together above the ocean, and they're still cool to look at. Like those are not three panels that every artist can make interesting.
Evaporation, condensation, forming a cloud, and then three planes go zipping into it in the middle of a dogfight.
Yeah, the storytelling is awesome too. Like even that panel with that trail of smoke leading you to the damaged American plane flying into the cloud, the depth of field. These guys, Andru and Esposito, just high marks. I really like the story too. I really like following the cloud through the war and the different ways it affects these people's fates, and how the cycle just starts all over again at the end, and we make war no more. This was a good one for me. I really dug it.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I like the art and everything. The story, I didn't like the story as much. I don't know, just because I guess it's whether it's more random, it's more happenstance. But I like the art. There's a couple of panels. There's we mentioned the paratroopers before. There's on the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth page. It's like a couple of panels that kind of blend together of these paratroopers charging out of the fog, weapons blazing and everything. And that's a pretty, a pretty, intense scene right there. Guns blazing and everything else. And
again, so much storytelling in one panel from this team. Yeah, it's really cool. I also dug, I should mention the way that this story tied into the seaborne theme of the framing sequence, right down to the lifeboat appearance. So some thought was going into picking this reprint, or at least it seems so. It's a happy accident if it is one, because finally we have a story that actually ties into what's happening to the poor suckers in the framing sequence.
Yeah, seaweed guy could be all like, you see those guys in the life raft? Yeah. I saw those guys 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I told different stories.
I didn't talk to them.
Yeah, I didn't talk to those guys, or whatever. So, we wrap this one up, and unfortunately, we have a feature that, if you want to talk about it, cool. But it's another creepy core. It's another 4 one-panel humor feature by cartoonist John Costanza, and I only found one of them even remotely funny, with a so-called joke about a mummy. You got a soldier digging and yelling to his sergeant saying, "Hey, Sarge, I just hit something hard in my foxhole. Maybe it's buried treasure, huh?" And there's a mummy rising up by him. But other than that, these humor features are not exactly qualifying for the category.
No, there they are. You read them. Okay, whatever. Move on. I don't know if I've ever gotten a chuckle out of them. Just
No. So I took that bullet so I could hand this next story completely over to you because, man, this is your. If I didn't give this one to you, you would take it from me. So off you go.
through the mic and take it away from you.
Justifiably.
Yes. Okay. The next story, it's called The Pool. We believe that this is original. We can't find any references to this being a reprint anywhere. It was written by Wein.
I think it's Wein, but I've heard Wein and Wein. He recently passed, and I'm a huge fan of his writing outside of this stuff. But I was very glad to find his work here. But I think it's Wein, but whatever.
Okay. So anyway, it's written by him and Marv Wolfman, and art by the immortal Russ Heath. And and let me just say, we have the Joe Kubert love and we have the Russ Heath love. The art is just unbelievable in this story. The synopsis, it starts 12,000 years ago. A group of cavemen lost in the desert find a miraculous pool of water, and during World War II, a group of American soldiers do the same. And as the story goes on, the cavemen are attacked by another tribe, and the Americans are attacked by the Germans. In the end, everybody dies, and the pool waits.
Hell yeah.
And I really just don't have words for this story. Just the imagery of like the cavemen, the one tribe of cavemen that shows up after the first tribe is at the water hole. They're just heaving rocks down these guys, and just the bodies flying all over the place, and the way the muscles are drawn, and the shadows, the hand-to-hand combat, the fury on the faces, the knives, the pistols being used as clubs. It is an incredibly intense hand-to-hand combat. I mean, I'm really hard pressed to think of any time I've ever seen hand-to-hand combat drawn as savagely as you see it in this 6-page story.
Yeah, it's very believable. Just there's no like grandstanding feet 7 feet apart, big haymaker punches. These are real people fighting, tackling each other, trying to survive. And like you mentioned, the storytelling here, there's only narration captions, and they're cool, but again, they're not necessary. Russ Heath is right up there with Kubert in so many ways, and one of those ways is his grasp of visual storytelling. You don't need any of the words that are printed in this story to follow along. In ways I thought it would have been more powerful without them. You don't even need the time frames printed. You get that these are cavemen. You get that these other guys are modern day soldiers. But I'll get to, I'll just say it here. Like beyond the storytelling, the visual design of these pages blew me away. There's one element that goes through every page here. So you have the individual panels, and they're floating on a background of other panels that highlight the other timeline. Like when you have the cavemen on page 1, there's 4 panels of their journey, and behind them, forming the background of the page, are 3 oversized panels of the World War II setting. So it's story the balance between the timelines is actually visually represented more than just by altering or alternating from one page to the other. Both timelines are on every page. It's just the other one is the background image. And I've never seen that effect used anywhere.
Yeah, like what you just said. Yeah, the cavemen are fighting to superimposed World War II, Korea, World War I, war on land, war at sea, war in the air imagery. And then the 1943 one, it's dinosaurs or sharks or pterodactyls or prehistoric animal combat.
Oh yeah, such cool dinosaurs drawn by Russ Heath too. Like, even though I'll give them this just because they're so cool. But we have a caveman tribe, and then you're showing me images of dinosaurs. Those don't match up, but damn, they look cool. So
you like mastodons and saber-toothed tigers so many times.
It's like. Am I doing a little Killjoy here? I think I am. I think I've got the Killjoy was here moment for once, is that he's showing creatures that couldn't have been alive at the same time as cavemen, but I am absolutely not going to hold it against him.
It's not like the creatures are in the same panels as the cavemen. It's just superimposed. It's just what the World War II fighting is superimposed on. But
yeah. No, as I said, these are some of my favorite pages I think I've ever seen in any comic book. So I am absolutely fine letting that go. Yeah, I can't say enough about it. That's easily the highlight of the issue for me was this story. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean,
those 6 pages.
yeah. It's good that you have a Killjoy was here because I had nothing. I had nothing on
Yeah, well, you're not as nerdy about dinosaurs as I am, so. Exactly. Yeah, I'm definitely in the traditional sense the far bigger nerd, but and that's why I let you have that story, and I'll take the next one.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. The next one I'll take as an even further demonstration of my grace, because it ain't as good. It's called Combat Size, and it's reprinted from the 3rd story in Our Army at War 66 from January 1958. It is written by Bob Haney, who I tend to love, but I don't like this story. But on the plus side, we are back to Russ Heath on art. So the synopsis here, such that it is that a new fresh-faced soldier begins to feel smaller as he gets close to the action and eventually shrinks to a few inches high or so. He has various run-ins at this size, but acquits himself fine before making a stand against a fighter plane at the end and growing to mile-high size. So it's basically a metaphor for how you might feel small when you're faced with real action, but as you soldier on, so to speak, you can eventually feel like you're a mile high. And it's a little packet of propaganda in the middle of this comic. And, it is what it is. The drawings are inventive. The art is great. It's Russ Heath. He does good stuff with the visual trick of the supposedly tiny soldier against the regular sized opponents. And, that's really, for me, the only redeeming feature. So you want to drag out Killjoy and shoot some more holes in this thing?
Well, the going back to the box, that was in the original.
Oh yeah.
The original says the sergeant told me a soldier is a mile high as long as he keeps fighting and advancing, but I couldn't tell him how little I felt in my first action. No one would believe my combat size. And you were joking before because you said the placement of the floating seaweed head in the reprint is
oh, it's hilarious. That's my favorite part of the story, actually, other than the fact that the Russ Heath art is great. What I enjoyed the most is, so the opening page of the story is one giant panel, and it shows a supposedly gigantic or normal sized Nazi soldier firing at our miniature soldier who's standing inside a footprint, and the blast of the gun hitting the side of the wall of that footprint the little soldier standing in has the seaweed monster's head floating in it, like it just popped up out of the explosion. And he's saying, through the waves of time, things that appear to be reality may indeed be illusion, such as the tale of a soldier's stature, which all that would have been better above the words combat.
Yeah.
But the fact that the seaweed monster's head is just popping up in the air like the ricocheting bullet out of the Nazi's gun was hilarious to me. Like, they could not think of a place to put this at all. So they were like, what the hell, right there, pop. So that to me, I mean, the drawing itself is great, and I'm glad the original book exists that doesn't have the seaweed monster's head here, but that is also kind of hilarious.
That's the good thing about having the originals, because there's been a couple of times where they've taken out a vital piece of the plot by going, floating seaweed monster head, or the desert hag, or the old man in the house, or something like that.
So far, the worst example of that is the Reef of No Return, where they just don't even tell you what the deal is, why they want to blow up that reef. But I'm still having trauma from that story.
Yeah, the as far as Killjoy was here on this one, it's minor. I mean, like I said, this is Russ Heath. I generally don't have very many complaints about anything Russ Heath draws, but the very, very last panel of the story, it's this the GI is a mile high, and he had just shot down an attacking enemy fighter with a captured German machine gun. And the funny thing is, the machine gun in the mile high soldier's hands looks like it's a pop gun, but that gun is still bigger than the enemy plane that he just shot down. By it's just kind of a weird
even adjusting for his supposed mile high stature. I mean, maybe the gun feels bigger too now that it's soldiered on. Maybe it also feels a mile high. It's not just the soldier, man. Like, even his gear is affected by his bravado. Who knows? Or maybe Russ Heath just said, hell with it, I'm done with this story.
Last panel, I'm done. I got to go draw some stuff for Playboy.
Yeah. Now, as far as a high point for this one, what'd you have?
Oh, There's this one panel on the page before the last page where the GI threw a grenade that looks no bigger than a tack. But when the grenade lands on this German machine gun nest, which is where he captured the machine gun, it's just the imagery of there's the helmet is getting blown out of the explosion. There's shrapnel holes getting ripped through it. The machine gun's getting knocked askew. All the smoke and the dirt and the flame and everything. I think it's a very powerful, well drawn panel of the combat.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
That's just one of my favorite panels.
Yeah, I don't disagree. You're absolutely right. But I got to tell you, when I got to that panel reading this story, probably prepped by the seaweed monster's head, this panel made me laugh because the helmet's flying up in the air. There's no sign of the soldier at all. Like he's been atomized. The helmet's flying up in the air, and all I could think of was like whoo-hoo, like some kind of goofy noise or something. It was just that panel made me laugh, but I think I was set up for it by that bouncing seaweed monster's head. I thought he'd show up again right there, like haha.
Well, we've discussed this before in earlier podcasts where it's just like you always know that the bad guy is dead when his helmet falls out of the tree or when his weapon falls out of the tree or something like that. It's like, oh, he's gone. So I guess that you could make that comparison in that panel. It was, there goes the helmet.
Heck yeah. It is a great panel. I love it. It's again, I do like the fact that you don't even see the body, but there's so much smoke and fire and and the explosions obscuring that. So
that's one of the things. If you pay attention to the DC war books, is they did that a lot in combat. You almost never saw a body. American enemy. You almost never see a body. You see like the helmet, you see it falling out of the tree, or the weapon, or some piece of gear or something like that. It was actually pretty rare to actually see a to see a dead body.
That's the code. The code was still around, so they have to.
Yeah, approved by the Comic Code Authority. That may have been part of it. But there was that issue we were talking about yesterday with where they got the two brothers in the B-17.
Oh yeah.
And at the end, the plane lands and the two brothers are lying dead in the fuselage, and the pilot's like, "Who fired for Nick?" And so that was actually one of the rare occasions where there was actual bodies in the panel.
Yeah, I mean, there's Nick is firing over his dead brother's body in a few panels in that story. Yeah. So yeah, it is unusual, I guess. Yeah. Huh. Well, after this one, we have a 1-page text story that I'm assuming you read.
Yep. Behind the lines. 3 quick true stories of quick thinking U.S. military types. Next.
Well, since you are the one that takes the bullets, so to speak, and reads those little text stories, and I do not, I'll also let you have what I know you really want is this double-page spread that's coming up next. So take it away, man.
Okay. Next it's a battle album. It's called Flying Guns. It's written and drawn by Sam Glanzman. So yeah, this is a really good issue. We got Joe Kubert, we got Russ Heath, and we got Sam Glanzman.
You're not hating this one at all.
My big 3, pretty much. And it's it talks about the evolution of aerial machine guns in World War I, German, American, British, and it's a 2-page spread, and it's of a Newport 28 that is smashed into no man's land, and there's a couple of victorious German planes flying overhead, and it's an American plane. It's the Hat in the Ring Squadron is denoted, easy for me to say, on the side of the fuselage, and the pilot is burning up, in the wreckage of the cockpit.
Oh yeah, he is. Speaking of bodies on panel.
Yeah, and I've seen enough of Sam Glanzman's art with his work in Haunted Tank and the USS Stevens and everything else like that. I've gotten to the point where I could recognize his art by simply looking at flaming bodies on a panel. If that's not grisly, I really don't know where to go with that. But
that is a fantastic detail, and I'm sure it would probably make him proud. But Sam just kills this. I mean, there's ribs of the aircraft's wings, sticking up out of the ground, punching through the fabric, flames and smoke and cylinders from the engine, and barbed wire tangled up in the landing gear and bullet holes in the tail surfaces. And this would not make a really good recruitment poster, though. Come fly with us.
Oh
That's
God.
what I thought when I saw this. I'm like, wow, this is you're not trying to recruit with this image. It's amazing, but damn, this is like, hey, think about it before you get in one of these seats, you know?
Here we go, going all history on here. The casualties, among the British, the RAF, Royal Flying Corps, especially during bloody April 1917. I mean, the squadrons were going through. I think there was like some squadrons that were like 3, 4, 500% casualties. I mean, some of these guys didn't last very long at all. And the fun, quote fun thing to remember is that these guys didn't have parachutes. I mean, the British had this attitude of, the parachute is additional weight, that slows the plane down. But they also had worries that, if the pilot had an easy way out, he would just jump and he wouldn't stay in the fight. So there were like there were undoubtedly thousands of guys that needlessly died during World War I because they didn't have a parachute. I mean, they let the guys in the observation balloons have parachutes, but they didn't let the guys in the planes have parachutes. And if you're on a plane that catches fire, you have two choices. You could ride that fiery comet to the ground, or you could jump. And a lot of guys chose to jump. And what choice do you have? Do you want to burn up, or do you want to have a couple of moments of relative peace before that sudden stop?
Yeah, well, looking at that guy that's in that plane right there, I think the choice is clear not to try to ride it to the ground. He's not having a good time.
Yeah, definitely not.
So I'm amazed that this hasn't been turned into a poster either by DC Comics or by you yourself. When I saw this image, I'm like, how have I not seen that hanging on Rich's wall for the past 30 years or whatever?
Because there's so many of these battle albums throughout the DC war books that there's too much to choose from.
Oh, so this is a series they keep doing because this is great.
You're going to be seeing a lot more of these probably.
This was one of my favorite parts of the whole issue. I mean, probably it's such a showcase of the art, but also just the little educational blurb telling you about the development of machine guns that can operate using what is this thing called, an interrupter that we take it for granted now, but let the bullets fire between the rotating propeller on the plane so it wouldn't shoot your propeller off.
When aerial combat first started, I mean, originally these guys were just shooting at each other with like pistols or rifles or something like that, throwing bricks at each other. There was one thing they did was they would drag kind of like an aerial anchor behind them, trying to snag the wing and rip the fabric off the wing. There's all kinds of just goofy crap that they were
experimenting in
1914, 1915. Because the big problem was they have these machine guns, but you were risking the most effective way to shoot down an enemy airplane was to aim your plane at the enemy plane and shoot at it. But you're risking, shooting your prop off in the process.
Yeah.
So there's this one guy, and his name was Roland Garros, and he had this idea of he fit metal sleeves over the tips of his propellers. And so the idea was, if a bullet hit the prop, it would ricochet back. Of course, you're still playing the numbers game. But sooner or later, you can only do that so many times before A, you break your prop off anyway, or B, perhaps more importantly, you get the ricochet right back at you.
I was just thinking of that. I was like, do you really want to bounce it back, though?
But, eventually he got shot down. The Germans captured his plane before he could destroy it, and they saw what he was doing, and they're like, "Screw that! There's a better way to do that." And Anthony Folker designed this interrupter gear where the machine gun wouldn't fire if the prop was in front of the machine guns. And the Germans had a field day for a couple of months in the air war until the Allies captured one of these interrupter gears and made their own version of it.
Yeah, you can see the results of that field day in this drawing. Yeah, that is not good news.
Nah, not at all.
This is an amazing piece, and you have the image of the plane down. You have the educational blurb, and down below you have 4 diagrams, 4 call out pictures of different machine guns from different models of planes, I imagine, or just different guns. There's so much in this 1-2 page spread that
all these machine guns were used. The Spandau, the Lewis, the Vickers, all these planes were used on the ground, and they just got adapted for use on an airplane. They got with the interrupter gear firing through the prop, or they were fired from behind by the observer. Some aircraft had a gun that was mounted on the top of the upper wing, so it was firing over the arc of the propeller. That was something that they did. Of course, the downside of that was it was up high enough. Some of these guys had to stand up to shoot, and with almost predictable results. here.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
something I really want to read more about is the early history of airborne warfare. Like the stuff you were talking about in the beginning where they're dragging anchors on each other, throwing bricks, all that stuff. Like that is what I wanted because I know very little about that. And that just sounds like it's pure chaos, but it's also just kind of awesome that they're like, I see that guy. He's in another plane. I'd really like to hurt him bad. So I'll pull out my gun. I'll throw an object at him. I'll drag an anchor across his wing. This is just incredible to think about.
Yeah. Well, it's a hell of a time period, obviously, when they're figuring all this stuff out. But yeah, so yeah, we'll be seeing a lot more of these battle albums, hopefully, as we move on into that.
That is exceptionally good news. And like, look at that 1-2 page spread. And it's the thing that we probably talked most about in the issue. That's how good that is. Like I say that, one of those earlier stories was my favorite thing in the issue. It was my favorite full story was the pool. And it's still toe to toe with this 2-page spread, but this, for 2 pages, you can't get much better than this. So not to set up the next story for failure, but I'll take what's called Pilot for a Sub. It's reprinted from the 3rd story in Our Army at War 68 from March 1958. And it's the return of Bill Finger with artist Mort Drucker of Mad Magazine fame coming back and Weird War Tales. And I like this one a lot better than the previous Bill Finger stories. I actually was quite fond of this story all by itself. It only seems like a slight disappointment or because it comes right after that battle album spread. So the synopsis here is you see a shark blown up by the detonation of a mine that's in the path of a submarine. They're clearing the way and they're blowing up these mines and some poor shark gets, eliminated by that. And the shark's pilot fish is left all alone without a shark to hang out with. So it adopts the submarine and it follows the sub along and witnesses all of the sub's ensuing battles as the fish guides the steel shark along the way, or at least it feels that it's doing so. And it's a cute little story that I could see being like an early Disney movie when they didn't care quite so much about showing more gruesome stuff on screen and whatnot. Like, Bumby's mother gets shot and the shark that shark is blown away in the second panel and it's lying on its back just dead.
Open and everything.
Man, it is tragic. But the drawings in this, it's Mort Drucker. They're really cool. The battles, from my non-history expert perspective, were awesome to watch. Like drawing a sub at war has got to be difficult, and every panel of this just killed. I loved it. And the poor little fish following this sub around while torpedoes are flying everywhere and depth charges are going off, ships are exploding, and at the end it's very proudly leading its submarine. The fish actually saves the sub at one point. Well, if it feels that it does. Again, the fish is just sort of there, but this is a cute little story. I did not expect to find a story I would say that about in Weird War Tales, but here it is. I had a lot of fun with this one.
Yeah, the sub got damaged and it set down it got trapped in a coral reef, and then they couldn't find a way out. So there were frogmen outside, and the pilot fish is just swimming away, and they knew the pilot fish was out there, so they're just following the fish, and the fish leads them out of the reef and gets them back out into the open.
Wait! You're telling me it was almost the reef of no return? Eh? Come on, man.
Crickets.
It's a callback to the reef of no return, man.
See, this is why they destroyed the reef. Because the sub came back and said, screw that.
Damn fish. They were looking to get rid of this pilot fish. They left one fish alive. They weren't just blowing up mines. They were looking to exterminate marine life.
The banner in the original, goes, they were the strangest combination that ever cruised the seas. A giant submarine and a tiny fish. But war makes startling partners. Pilot for a sub.
I love that. So it makes me like the story even more. I really dig it. Like you say that the colors are better, but one thing I will note is that you have NA written next to Killjoy was here. So this story is historically accurate. The pilot fish has no Killjoy marks against him.
I'm just saying that nothing horrific, lunged out at me. I mean, if you're going to make me play that game, okay, I can play that game. I've mentioned before, how anything's German, they have swastikas slathered all over it, or they do the same thing with the Japanese. They have the red meatball on the fuselage and on the tail. They never put it on the tail. Okay.
I knew I could goge in to find something.
Max wants to be difficult. Okay,
Hey, it's a story with an animal in it, so I am going to be homering for it so hard because I'm a big softie for animals. So this story gets like all my booster energy that some of these other stories like the pool and the battle album don't need any help from me. But you put the cute fish in the World War II story and I'm showing up to defend it against all comers. And it was a good story anyway. I liked it. But man, you know, I'll say my absolute high point was, again, I could even killjoy this a little bit, but it's the smile on the proud pilot fish's face in the final panel. It could just be the angle of the fish's mouth, but he is absolutely supposed to look like he is grinning proudly as he leads the sub out of its, you know, danger in the reef to safety.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that we're on the same page when we're talking about facial expressions, because the floating seaweed head here, it's got this weird little slight head tilt going on, and it's got this, like even the seaweed head's like, oh man, I don't know. It's just the worst. This is like the worst seaweed monster head of the entire book. Is the one that starts.
I didn't notice that until I read it in your part of the script here, but it really does. It has the way the mouth part where the mouth would be is shaded, makes him look like he's like you said, he's just going, I don't know, here's a story, it's got a fish in it. It starts like it starts like this, and but that opening page with the ship and the explosions and the fish below with the sub, it's just, Mort Drucker just kills it here. I did not even know he drew Weird War comics, and he is one of my favorite artists in these 3 issues. It's just so cool to see him just coming in here and nailing it down. And so that story wraps up with a very proud little fishy, and again we're in the sea, which I think is, the reprints are chosen very well here, because we jump back to the end of the framing sequence and you can bring it home.
Okay, this is we're back to the seaweed monster talking to the one conscious airman, wrapping up the tale. The airman is begging him to stay and help, but the seaweed monster pretty much says, you're on your own, bud, and farewell. You alone are your fate's adversary. And the 2 survivors are rescued, quote unquote, 4 weeks later, and when asked how they survived, they say, rainwater and that seaweed, it kept trailing our raft night and day. The weeds attracted small fish. We ate them raw. Besides, we made up our minds to cheat the fates of war. So the guy's wounded buddy, he made it also. So the 2 of them made it. I will say one thing, if these guys have been on a raft for a month, I don't know when they had the time to shave, because they don't have a whole lot of 3-day growth going on here if they were in this thing for a month. but that's just just one person's opinion.
That counts as a killjoy. Yeah, man. Again, it's Joe Kubert. We're going to say this a million times. Every panel of this thing is fantastic. There's not one phoned-in panel. Even one panel that's mostly black ink still sets the tone of the story. It provides the perfect story beat to go with that narration, to mark the time on the page. Everything this guy does is literally a masterclass on how to make a comic book. I mean, there's a reason he opened his own school about how to make comics, and the thing is still in operation.
It is.
Yeah, this is incredible stuff. My high point visually, if I had to pick one, is the last panel on the first page where the seaweed monster's hand is reaching down to kind of touch the back of the conscious airman's head, and he's saying, miracles stem first from a man's own efforts. You alone are fate's adversary. Farewell. He's, like you said, he's saying, see ya, buddy. I can't help you because I'm probably a figment of your imagination. Later, but that panel looks so much like someone receiving a benediction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, you turn water into wine, but how about you turn salt water into fresh water? Can you do that?
Hey, that's another great thing I loved about this. Again, I think there's more thought going into choosing the reprints and working them in here, because one of the things that helps them survive is rainwater, just like it did in The Cloud That Goes to War. So we have tie-ins going on here, and I can't believe they're accidental with someone as good as Joe Kubert at the helm here. For once, the framing sequence is actually interacting with the content.
Well, it's issue 3, so maybe they're starting to work the framing sequence into some of the stories.
Hell yeah.
Just a little weaving in and out.
I'm definitely seeing, especially, and that jumped right out at me every time I encountered it in this issue, that there was a lot more play, that seemed to be a little more carefully selected content, and just the whole issue, just this was really starting to gel. Like, I enjoyed the first 2 issues a lot, but this was like an evolution. It was a step up in just the craft of it all. And the content was a lot of fun too, man. That the pool that's going down is one of my favorite pieces of comic book work I've ever seen.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those stories where, like, the more you look at it, the more you see just the detail work. I mean, like, as the combat goes on, the uniforms of the 2 20th century combatants become all tattered and torn and everything else like that. There's stuff in the background. There's people strangling each other. Just like I said, just incredible. Spears sticking out of cavemen's bodies laying on the ground next to the pool. They're just the savageness of the hand-to-hand combat that's portrayed in that story. It was just.
You go back, like you said, you can just read that story over and over again, and new things jump out at you. One thing that I started thinking of is what's going on in the entire image behind the central panels. Those background images with the alternating timelines, because I know that they drew the entire image. I don't like we're talking about an artist that isn't going to phone anything in, and I know that somewhere there's the entire image that those panels are floating over. At least the pencil layouts are complete somewhere, if these pages survived at all. And that's what I started thinking about, was like, man, I wish I could see the rest of that. So that's more than most little 6-page stories by anybody will ever do to you. That's like I said, in the middle of Weird War Tales #3, I encounter one of my favorite things I've ever read in a comic book. So that right there makes this a prize issue for me.
Yep.
And on that lofty note, we're gonna go to something a little bit lighter. We like to talk about our favorite ads in the comic, and we're gonna keep it to one favorite ad each for a bit. Trying to kind of.
Notice we're running a little bit long.
Yeah, we're running a little long. We're playing with the format here, so we each picked one favorite ad, and I'll let Rich go first.
Well, this was one that I saw in the episode from the last podcast. We just didn't get to it. It's right after the "Been Here Before" story. It's at the top of the page, and it's "Be taller. If you could grow 2 to 6 inches taller in 1 month, would you spend 25 cents to discover how? Fantastic new method of growing taller. Quick, safe, and permanent. No exercisers, appliances, drugs, or elevators. Send 25-cent coin for How to Be Taller. And it's the Height Increase Bureau of Brampton, Ontario, Canada. I'm like, yeah, I got to look this up.
And did you look up the Height Increase Bureau?
I did. I couldn't find them. I could not find them. I imagine something like this. They may have deliberately not, covered their tracks or something.
Did you
49 years ago or something?
I got to ask you, did you try looking up?
I did look up the.
No, I bet you. Oh man, the whole stupid joke. Did you try looking up?
Yeah.
To see the Height Increase Bureau.
Well, it's your.
I am just killing it this episode, man. I am bringing the jokes.
Yeah. If you want to call them that.
The Height Increase Bureau.
I was disappointed. I did look up the Height Increase Bureau, in Ontario, Canada, and yeah, just nothing. I couldn't find anything. It was talking about the metric system in Canada, and blah blah blah, and it's lose weight this way, and just nothing at all like what I was looking for, which was unfortunate. I would have loved to have actually found an article for that. But if like I said, if for nothing else, the Height Increase Bureau.
Yeah, that is something, man. That's out there somewhere. Someone knows the truth. Like, and what I find cool about that ad is you see again the cultural differences. Like, of course, everyone still generally wants to be taller, especially if you're a dude. That's still very tied into traditional BS machismo and all that. But back around this time, you also had ads all over the place for, too skinny, we'll help you put on weight. And that's very different than what you see out there now, So everyone wanted to be taller and to be skinnier. It's a very different time. And that's what I dig about getting into these ads. Now mine, I had to go for a house ad for another DC publication. There's a ton of great ads in here, but man, there is a full page ad for Jack Kirby's In the Days of the Mob and Spirit World magazines. Now, these things, for a Jack Kirby fan like me, they are kind of legendary. They only lasted one issue each, and DC was kind of embarrassed of them, it seemed. They put the company name Hampshire Distribution Limited on the covers instead of, DC Comics. And one rumor about that goes around is that Carmine Infantino disliked the whole project and sabotaged it on purpose. I mean, he was also not rumored to be a fan of Kirby's special treatment at DC, where he didn't have an editor. He edited his own books, stuff like that. There's a lot of, kind of storytelling about Carmine very much not being a fan of Kirby's stay at DC and kind of cutting them down at every chance he could get. But, I wasn't there, and a lot of people that tell these stories weren't there either. But still, that ad, to me, I'm looking at it right now, just the scroll special announcement, and they're trying to act like, this is your chance to get a hold of these precious magazines. It says, we deeply regret that due to the fact that our new magazines In the Days of the Mob and Spirit World sold out so quickly, so many thousands of you, our loyal readers, could not get a copy. Now that is utter BS. Like, they barely even tried to sell these things, and the few copies they had, they didn't even care about, apparently. So here's their last ditch attempt to sucker some people into buying these magazines they don't want to sell. But from what I've seen, the few I don't own these books, but I've seen some articles about them online. They were really cool, and they should have gotten a chance. Like this, Kirby breaking into mob stories and ghost stories, and in the magazine corner of the market, these really could have blown up. But if you believe the stories, Carmine didn't like it. I mean, the covers aren't that great. It comes from I think Kirby's playing around with collage imagery that he was getting into. Like, he did some great work inside comics with collages, but these covers look sort of like the first draft. Yeah, that was my big ad in the issue.
I'll just add on two quick little things on that. It's like, one, falling under the category of people I met and got autographs of. I got Infantino also on a couple of the old Star Spangled War stories and stuff. You were with me.
I was there. Yeah.
Boston Comic-Cons or something. It was probably one of his last shows or something like that. He was looking pretty advanced in age, when we were there.
Yeah,
so,
I remember he actually tried to get us a bit. I think he did put us off a bit, because you put your autograph book down and to a page, and he goes to sign it, and then he stops and he goes, "Hey, what's this?" He's like, "This Julius Schwartz is on this page. He's dead. What are you trying to say?" And then his handler's rolling his eyes, and then Carmine goes, "Ah, ha, 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 I gotcha," and he signs the page, and it was just fantastic. I mean, I got it to clear the air. To clear the air, I love Carmine's art. I'm a huge fan of his work on The Flash and The Elongated Man. I loved his art in Dial H for Hero. I am a big fan of the guy's art, so I don't want to just have all my audio in this episode be about rumors about Carmine being a joke to Jack Kirby. But yes, I was there when you met Carmine.
And the other thing is, even if I wanted to order one of these magazines, the coupon that you have cut out to mail in, you turn the page and it's part of the pool storyline. So I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not cutting out that coupon. I guess I'm not screwing up that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even note that. Like, this comes in the middle of the pool.
That's happened a couple of times where you see something that's really cool, but the coupon that you have to cut out is like in the middle of a story, or it's like the back of the frickin' cover, or something like that.
Maybe that's why they put the ad here, because they're trying to get rid of these magazines, and they're like, let's put it in the middle of the best story in the issue. And that brings us, and maybe that's why I was drawn back to it, other than my gigantic Jack Kirby fandom, but drawn back to it because it's in the middle of the pool, and it's one of the best stories I've ever seen in a comic. This was a great issue. I'm psyched to get into issue 4, but I'm also like, man, this is a hard act to follow. So we'll see what it brings. And I guess that'll wrap up this episode of Weird Warriors. And until next time, make war
no more.